Hello, I am here with Jay, and I realized I did not practice pronouncing his last name with him, so I'll let him do that part of the introduction before I completely mess it up. And he wrote this fantastic book of how to get what you want. It is part of his body of literature that he has out there. And I'm also going to share his author page from Amazon. And Jay, I'm going to let you talk a little bit about the inspiration on how to get what you want.
Well, thank you, Amy, and I appreciate you having me. And actually, you could pronounce it several ways, and it has been pronounced several ways. I've gone traditionally with Gauthier, but proper French pronunciation would be Gauthier.
I was going to go with Gauthier. I actually lived in Europe for a while, so
yeah, that's probably proper. I mean, I've been called Garcia, Gunther, you name it. It's just about everything. But yeah, either one goes real well. How to get what you want. The inspiration for that is because, I've dealt with people and been able to work with people for about 40 years now, in ministry mostly, but in other areas as well, business, coaching, athletic coaching, just a lot of vast background. And here's what I find. When you ask people what you want in life, a lot of times they don't even know. They just don't know. And they think they do. But you kind of get to that point where when you're suddenly asked, you can't narrow it down. And I was thinking back, Amy, to a time when I was younger, and one of my favorite stores was Toys R Us. And it was huge. For a kid, it was like just the ultimate. And I remember one year when I was probably about 12 years old, my grandmother, who every year had been purchasing things for me, she would save up in what they called a Christmas club account. And yeah, we're really dating ourselves now. So, and on this particular year, she figured I was old enough and she didn't know what to get me. So she told my mom, she said, look, he's got $100, which wouldn't go that far today, but it did then. And she goes, just take him to Toys R Us and let him pick. So this was awesome. And I remember walking in the first aisle and thinking, wow, I've got $100. I can pick anything I want. And I kid you not, this was a 3-hour process where it just kept not really knowing and taking stuff in the cart, putting it back, whatever. And I find that people are that way in life, I think, where it's like there's a whole world of possibilities out there, but then they have no idea. How many people do we know, Amy, that have gone to I'm not knocking this, but they've switched majors in college like 5 times. And then they end up doing something that they didn't even study for. Some people in their 50s and 60s seem to still be searching. And so that was the inspiration for the book.
Yeah, Jay, you bring up some good points, and one of them just hit really home to me. And I've done really, really cool things in my life, but for the longest time, I didn't necessarily do everything I wanted because part of what I wanted was fundamental on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which is like to eat, right? And so, I think that it is a great concept of what do you want, but what do you need, right? Because those things don't always balance out. What I really liked is to just be independently wealthy. Sure. But since that wasn't the way I was born, it was like I had to eat first. And so I want you to kind of go through that a little bit in the what do you want, which I feel like you do in the book go into those kind of things that obviously food comes first. You want to eat, and then you can really build on those things.
Well, tying in with food, we want to eat because we want something that's going to satisfy us. And that's what's very important. A lot of people are busy, but they're busy doing things that do not satisfy, and they're continually searching. And also when people do kind of think they know what they want, the other problem is, and the book goes into this, they're at point A and they're thinking about that, but they have no idea how to get it. They have no idea how to get from point A to point B, and what is the process that actually gets you there. So most people find themselves for years kind of stuck dreaming, but those dreams stay there. And the problem with dreams, as great as they are, is as long as they continue to just be dreams, they're not your reality. And so what I wanted to do was kind of not only identify the target, but then come up with the map. And the book lays out the map. How do you get from where you are to where you want to be. So that's kind of the outline of the book. And I will say this, I mean, I'm a very spiritual person. I've been in pastoral ministry for many years and all of that. And so that I personally believe, everyone believes differently, but I personally believe that part of the way to actually know and discover what you really want is to go back to the one who actually made you to begin with, the one who actually put the talents in you that you have, because everyone's different, everyone's unique. Just like, well, you mentioned food. Okay, so not too long ago, I got to go to a really good restaurant, steak restaurant. I mean, it was fantastic. And it was bought and paid for by somebody else, which made it even better. And it always tastes better when we don't pay, right? But here's the thing. In this fancy restaurant came all the layout of, I mean, we didn't get one fork, we got two. We got one for the salad, we got we got different knives, all of this. And so I started off with the salad, and it was a salad fork. Okay. And then there was a spoon there, but I didn't use that. Then the steak came. Okay. Can you imagine if I had tried to cut that wonderful steak with a spoon? The spoon was not created for that purpose. But I will say this, when it came time to dessert, which was wonderful, I didn't use the steak knife for that. I used the spoon. So I think where a lot of people are frustrated in life is they're doing things that don't fit where their talents are, what they were made for. And so it can be done, but it's a struggle. And things work the best when we're in the right fit. And so that's a lot of what we go into.
I think fit, and then like you said, you're at this very fancy steak dinner, but to get there, and I think something that especially the modern generations need to understand is those of us from the older generations is, we were at a point where maybe we didn't have steak dinners. We were living off ramen noodles and macaroni and cheese, not the good kind, like the kind that had the powdered kind, right?
Yeah.
And your food matters in that Maslow hierarchy of needs. And as your life evolves, as you do each step, then eventually you're at that fancy restaurant with multiple forks and knives. But that might be your goal, but every step in between, those are the things. I love that kind of analogy. And then the fit analogy, it's multi-aspect. For your readers, when they read this book, what do you think is the most important, the one thing that you want them to take away?
What I want them to take away is not to settle. Because a lot of people, when you say, well, how do you get what you want? And they'll look at you and they'll say, I gave up on that a long time ago. It's like life happened. I made this decision or this decision, or, all of a sudden I have responsibilities. I don't have time anymore. The reality is I have to go out and make this living, whether or not that's what I enjoy doing or not. They think that they're stuck and they give up on their dreams. And to me, that's not the way to live. I don't think that's the way we were intended to live. So for the reader who's there, basically what I want them to be inspired to do is say, okay, I'm not saying throw all responsibility out to the wind, but I'm saying, let's start to pick up the pieces here. Let's start to make a plan. Let's start to see how you can get from being stuck to starting to move down that road, that journey that would actually get you where you want to be. As long as we have breath, as long as we're still here, the opportunities are not done. They're not done. And just because we're where we are right now doesn't mean we have to stay there. And there are different things in the map that I bring out. For instance, there's mentors that come into our life, and we've all had them from the time that we were younger, and they show up at the right time. And today, more than ever, you can get mentoring in different ways. I mean, even if you can't afford to do that, there's programs like you're doing right now, Amy, and different things that are out there, and opportunities and free things on YouTube. And there's books, the audio books that are virtually nothing, sometimes even free. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities now, even if you can't sit down with a person personally, to glean and to get. And as you're highlighting authors, how important are books? I mean, to be able to get that type of mentoring from people that really know a certain subject and have gone a certain way. So there's mentors. You're going to build in the A in MAP, because it's MAP in the book. So there's mentors. There's the A, which is accountability. You need to find some compelling reasons, people, causes, outcomes that are going to cause you to stay on the track and not just be where you are. And then the last one, I say it's prayerful purpose, but even if you don't pray, purpose. I mean, there's got to be some reason for why you're doing something. Even all the way back in school, I was a terrible student. I was smart, but I was not the greatest student all the time, because when I didn't understand why I was studying something or what I was going to use it for, then I didn't want to do it. And a lot of us are like that in life. If we are excited about it and we see why, then we'll do it. But if we don't, then we don't. And so all of that, and when you follow that map, all of a sudden you'll be from where you started to where you wanted to be.
I really appreciate that. I love the map story there and analogy. And when you talked on the books and the mentoring, it made me think of a few of the authors I've had in the past. And one of the ones I want to highlight is, if anybody out there has watched or listened to G.E. Moore in his book, Beale's on the South Side, The Prince of the South Side. It's a story of a young boy struggling in Southside Chicago, right? And I think that story always resonates with me. It's just so powerful, because we have to be able to see people in this mentorship, see people in here and in these stories. And Jennifer Harshman earlier talked about helping kids to create their own books, to see that. And it's such an important concept, is being able to see that you can get out of being stuck. And so if you have people in those challenges, Jay, what can people do for outreach? You mentioned books is a great way, but what are some things people could do maybe in the community and in other areas that you've seen work in your amazing ministry?
Well, there's podcasts obviously to listen to. There's also, they can connect themselves in some type of service, some type of community service. If you want to, one thing that I've found that I didn't always know, and that is this, that most people that have learned something and have accomplished something in life, in most cases, they want to pour that into other people that are actually interested. So you can apprentice with people. You can go and I seem to have lost you right now. Can you still see me?
I can still see you.
Okay. I don't know what happened to my screen. As long as you can still see me.
You are still right there.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know what happened to my screen. Anyways, there's people that you can apprentice with. You can go assist. I think it's important, when you can, find people that you admire, that have learned to do things that you would like to learn, and see if they're willing to show you, and a lot of times they are willing to at least spend some time with you or have you come along. And I think it's also important for those of us who learn things to seek out those who we can then pour our life into and multiply, because otherwise it dies with us, and that's part of the reason I've even been writing the books that I'm writing, because the things that I've been able to learn from other people that have affected in my life, I'm thinking to myself, if I don't take the opportunity to then share those, then those things just die with me. And so I think that process is incredibly important. And now
I love that you shared that, and I'm going to share a link right now into 24 Authors in 12 Hours. We do have a donate. This is an author helping author event, which Jay kind of alluded to, which is super important to us, as well as a link for our merch. If anybody wants to get a 24 Authors in 12 Hours, a coffee cup or mug or anything, we love to support our authors. And this is really, we rise up by lifting others up, right? Like by having authors who are out here these authors now are networking other authors. They're all interconnected, and I love that messaging from that. And it's really it's not about, hey, I'm going to try to raise some money. What does 24 authors and 12 hours cost? It costs 30 minutes of your time, but what's the reward value that you get back out of it? And I think that that's a key point that you're talking about in the mentorship is when you're young, you're kind of seeking that mentorship, but then as you get older, how are you giving back that mentorship?
Right, very important, because you want to multiply yourself, and you definitely don't want it to die with you. So
Really inspirational. I do want to highlight as well for everybody that my book today is available. I have 3 books that I've written that are on Kindle that you can get absolutely free today. And one of the most important things for us as authors when we're out there in the universe, aka Amazon universe, is it's all about the algorithms. So the amount of shares, the amount of stars, the written text, it really, really matters. And if you're like, hey, I have an author in my life, I would like to help and support them, the number one thing you can do is just actually leave a review on a book. And let's talk a little bit for you, Jay. You are a prolific author. I've shared your author page out here. What has been your experience in your writing journey, in your advice for authors who are out there?
well, I would say one of the key things is just to finally do it. I know that I had the outline to my first book, which is the Audacious Faith Playbook. I had that outline in my phone for over 2 years. And every time I sat down to do it, because I had written one small book previously, but every time I sat down to do this book, and I wanted it to get out so bad, but I literally could get about a paragraph and that was it. I was just stuck. And then one day, finally, it's just like, no, I need to do this. And I sat down and the book was done in 3 months. So it's just a matter of really deciding. Now, I did, get some, more advanced tools, which helped me to do that a little bit better. And so maybe it was just the right timing for me. But I would say the main thing is you sit around thinking about it and thinking about it, but there comes a point where you have to decide that this message really has to get out.
Yeah, I think that's a super important aspect. For those of you who've listened to the different segments today, there's been a lot of writing coaches, a lot of coaches in different areas. And I think the theme that you hear throughout the day with Jay here to be our closer is you've got to do it in the end, right? And
Mhm.
it's okay. And I really want to talk about this with Jay and let him expand on it is this asking for help, right? You don't have to do everything alone because it can be overwhelmed. And so, who helped you on the journey, Jay, on getting your first book out? Not necessarily a person, but just, even if it's just more in general.
Well, what happened was that I first actually, a few years back, was on someone who had offered a course about getting your stuff out on Amazon, because I figured that was incredibly difficult to do. Well, in reality, it's not. And then even my thing was, I'm thinking, okay, even if I get the book done, I won't know how to format it. I won't know how to get it done and all that. And then someone that I was like, oh, just go on Fiverr or something and just get, hire somebody. And a lot of people like to do it themselves, but I'm thinking to myself, for the $80, $90 that I pay the guy to do the cover and the thing, and he does it all the time, why am I going to spend weeks and then probably still get it wrong? So sometimes spending just a little bit of money saves you a lot of headache and a lot of time and gets it out there. So that was my first obstacle. Was I was afraid of even, it's like, I'll write this book, but I won't even know how to get it, out there. But it's not that hard. It really isn't. Once you have the files and they're formatted right, for those who've done this, putting it on Amazon is a breeze. I mean, it's really, really quick. And so that was part of the thing. And then the other stuff, I heard you mention in the last segment about AI a little bit and all that. And I want to be very clear that that's been a game changer for me. But the way that I use it, you mentioned it, is that it's totally my thoughts. It's totally everything from me. I don't like the aspect of, here, I'll just give AI a subject and let it write the book. I think that's very unauthentic. But what I'll do, quite honestly, is I'll sit there, because when I was trying to write the books at first, and it was taking me so long, it's just, I couldn't sit there and concentrate to write it so long. And I would say to myself, I speak, because I'm a speaker, is more of what I am. I speak these messages all the time. If I could just do that and somehow have it work, it would be so much easier. So I learned to then dictate everything that I want, and I basically just share the whole thing. And then it's like, okay, now put it in proper English for me, in written. And then it would do it back. And then I'd look at it and be like, okay, no, but I want to add this story, and I want to add this, and I want to add this. And I pour into it and all that. And I'll probably do that in a chapter 8, 9, 10 revisions, building and all that. And it's totally me by the time it's done, but that's the way that I will use it. I say responsibly, where it's me, but it would take me forever to write it, to just write every word.
And Jay, I teach workshops using AI as a writer circle. And I always compare it to when I was in a writing group, and this is like in 2016. And we would take the book chapters between like 3 or 4 of us, and we would share the book chapters around. And then you had like, I think it was a week, maybe it was 2 weeks, and you had to read other people's book chapters, and then you would write your comments on their book chapters, and we'd all get back together, and then you'd exchange this information, and you'd have your next book chapter ready. And it was a very, very tedious process.
Right.
In the meantime, I can go to an AI and I can put that same book chapter in, and with the correct prompt, be like, what changes should I make? What are your recommendations? I don't have to accept those.
Right.
But also now, if I go to more than one AI, and there's ethical issues with that on the environment, and everybody can consider like what their role is on that. But if you go to more than one AI, how is that going to any different than going to one or more friends and doing the same thing like that I was literally doing with humans back in 2016? And so I think each of us have to go through this. As a university professor, we do talk a lot about the ethical use of AI. And one of the people earlier said, like, AI is not going anywhere, right? If AI is gone, humanity's not in a good place. So how do we use these tools and leverage them in a way? But at the same time, like you said, it can't write the book for you. It can be a tool. And you brought up a great point. I've heard of people using diction. There was a wonderful movie. And I'm not a huge movie fan overall. Especially, I always say, I don't like to watch movies based in this reality. If I want to see something, it needs to have magic. But it was a movie about a guy who was a writer. So I was, of course, drawn to it. And he ended up having a woman that he dictated the entire book to. And then she was writing out the book for him, but then she'd periodically be like, I don't like what you're doing with this character, right? And then they would change something. And this real collaboration. And so, in a lot of ways, it is like collaborating with AI.
It is. And I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't admit to you that sometimes some points or some ways that things are said, I'm like, oh, that's incredible. And then it becomes like a brainstorming tool, that causes you to then think of it in a little bit of a different way. And then, by the time you're done, you've come up with something that probably is better than you would have just done yourself. I mean, in most cases, and you get very, very happy with it. And there's been in one case where literally I thought, actually, in How to Get What You Want, the book that we're talking about today, I thought I was done with it. And I started reading through it again, the final draft, and it's like, no, I want more out of this. So then I started putting in what I already had and said, I need to draw out more of this. And so it was a process that took a little while, but I was really happy with it then when I made those revisions.
And, I just think an important point is that kind of like you said, you're asking it these organic questions that you would otherwise be asking another person. The difference is you don't have access to all these people on demand at 2 o'clock in the morning, which is
Right.
sort of this wonderful thing that you have of, when it's a tool. So I don't want to beat the AI horse to death. There's definitely a lot to it. What I do want to go back to is sort of the themes throughout the day. I do want to thank everybody so much who's been listening. It is a marathon session, and these are all there later on. You might be listening to this as a future date. Is just the importance that we're here together as a collective, authors helping authors. 24 authors in 12 hours came about because of the pandemic, and as I started it as an author trying to say, how can I get my book out? It became much more of, how do I get our books out? I know that right now it has changed, and I think AI is the reason. There's all these scammers out there right now. They reach out and they're like, hey, do you want to be in our book club? Okay, it's $200, or it's like whatever amount of money to be on a podcast or something. This is an organic author helping author event. I am not trying to scam you. I do not want any money from you. Jay can tell you he's not giving me a dime. The only thing I'm asking is that you give me 30 minutes of your time. I will share your books. I will share your links. We will have a wonderful conversation. And that's what I'm looking for. If you do want to donate, if you want to buy something, also for any of the authors, any book that you read from an author forever and ever, forever now, please leave them reviews. The number one thing you can do for any author is to leave a review. And Jay, we are coming towards the end of our time. You are the last speaker of the night. And I just kind of want to leave it to you to bring it home.
Well, I just want to encourage everybody out there, whether you're an author or whether you're just interested in books and all that, exactly what you were saying, Amy. I think what's really important, most of the authors that I know aren't necessarily doing it because they're trying to get rich off of it. I think the main reason they're doing it is because there's a message that's important to them, that they've lived out, that they've come to understand, and they know it has value and they want to get it out to the world. And so I think that any way that we can do that, in all the various promotions and helping each other's books and just getting all those great ideas and life experiences out there, is really what makes the difference. There's so much that people watch today that's just so hollow, that just basically has such little value whatsoever, that the things and the ideas and the life experiences that people are sharing in books, I think are more valuable than ever. And it's very important that if there's something that you're thinking, I want to write a book, but I don't know if anyone would read it. It's really not the point. We don't know when someone's going to read it or when they're not. I've had where I think nobody's paying attention, and then all of a sudden one person will come to me and said, this particular chapter in the story that you told in this particular book really moved me because I've been there. And that right there makes it worth it. There may not be thousands that have read it, but that right there makes it worth it. So if you've got that book in you, get it out and do it.
Such a great point. And this time we focus mostly on the nonfiction, but next month, like I said, February 14th, all things, romance, romantasy, rom-com, poetry. People have stories, and there's a very, very big difference between when you read that book and when you watch something. And it was brought up very well about, you can pause it, you can think about it, you're envisioning it in your head. It is very, very different. And 110 times people will say the book was better than the movie. We had a competition the other day, and it was out there, like, when has the movie ever been better than the book? And I think that I just saw Jay's eyes go like, I don't know. I can't think of one. It's hard.
Yeah, most of the time when you read I'm guilty of a lot of times when I haven't actually read the book and just watched the movie. But from what I'm told and from the experiences that I do have, yes, usually the book is, the first, this is really a bad example, but the first book that I ever remember reading through when I was a kid, that I actually stuck through the whole thing, was, of all things, the Amityville Horror.
Oh.
And probably not the book you expected me to tell you, but I was reading that book. I couldn't put that thing down. It was just like, oh my gosh, what's happening? And and all of this, and it was such suspenseful and everything. Then the movie comes out. I end up watching the movie, and I'm thinking, this is dumb. It was just nothing compared to the book and the experience that I had reading that book.
Yeah, that's a really great point. By the way, back in last October, we featured different murders, different mysteries, thriller, chillers, all things that go bump in the night. You can go back and look at those amazing authors if you're looking for some books to read. Hopefully, you got some things today on your TBR list from this. So many authors, all of their books are in the links as they give me more information, events, things going on. I'm going to share them. I will be back with you next month, February 14th, and we're going to be talking about romance. You have a book in you. This is, once again, 24 authors in 12 hours. Jay, I appreciate your time so much, and everything that you do. I know that you had a long, hard day, and I appreciate that you spent your time here with us today.
It was great. I appreciate the invitation, and I just wish the best to everybody.